How do I work with fractions and decimals? A lot of students struggle with the idea of working with fractions and decimals. So the thing that I encourage all of my students to do when presented a problem with a fraction is to simply multiply the entire equation using the multiplication property of equality by the largest denominator. In this case, I see 8 is the largest denominator. So if I multiply everything by 8, 1/2 of 8 is 4, and that's an F. So I write 4F plus 4 times 8 is 32, and that does not divide by 3, so I'm going to leave the 3 in the denominator, is equal to 1/8 of 8 is 1. But I still have a denominator, so it's not really ready for me to work with yet. What I'm going to do to make this easy to work with is I'm going to multiply this entire equation by the highest denominator again, which now is 3, and 3 times 4 is 12, and that's an F, plus 32. 3 times 32 is 96, divided by 3 gives me 32, is equal to 3. Now I have no fractions. I get to go ahead and solve it as I would any equation. So the subtraction property of equality gives me 12F is equal to negative 29. The division property of equality, I divide both sides by 12, and F is negative 29 over 12. So what I get to see is the fraction only comes back at the end. I don't even have to worry about it. I don't divide it out. I leave it as an improper fraction, unless I'm told to do something a little bit more with it. Now let's take a look at how I deal with decimals. If I have a problem with decimals, and this is a problem that every year I give my students, and every year students have trouble doing it because they try to calculate with the decimals. The problem I encounter there is that when I work with a decimal, I tend to hit something wrong on the calculator. So I'm looking at this and see that this needs to move 1, this needs to move 1, this needs to move 2, and this needs to move 1. 2 is the largest amount of spaces I need to move. So just like I got rid of the the denominator in fractions, I'm getting rid of the decimal to avoid mistakes. I'm using the multiplication property of equality, and I'm going to multiply the entire equation by 100. This is going to give me 550D plus 3460 is equal to 425D plus 6460. At this point, I'm going to wind up approaching it as I would all of my problems. I want to make sure that my variable term is positive and always positive. I'm going to accomplish this by moving the small term first. So I subtract 425D from both sides. I'm going to remember that I can only subtract D's from D's, and I'm going to get 75D plus 3460 is equal to 6460. Now I'm going to go ahead and subtract. I'm moving away my second step in solving equations. I'm going to move 3460 away from my variable term. So I subtract it from both sides, and I get 75D is equal to 3000. Now my next step in solving equations is to always inverse away. Use an inverse property. This is 75 times D. And the inverse of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by 75. So that's going to give me D is equal to 40. At this point, all I have to be able to do is check it. But now there's 4 steps we get to always use in solving equations. I get to go ahead and make sure I move my small d. So I'm going to move my small d. I'm going to move away from D, and then I'm going to inverse away. I get to use these all the time, and when I'm always moving my small d, I get to be left with a positive d, which will be very helpful when I deal with inequalities.